Good afternoon, boys and girls. Here is Chapter 7 of our read aloud, Furball Puppy and Me, Rats, Rats. I stayed on the back of the couch most of the night. I didn't get a bit of sleep. Every time I so much as thought about dozing off, the puppy would bounce against the bottom of the furniture. He shook my couch and tried to get his short paws up on the seat. He scratched against the bottom cushion. He chased his tail and yapped. Yap, yap, play with me, he cried. I tried to ignore him. Maybe he would go away. At least maybe he would go to sleep. Yap, yap, I miss my mother. I miss my brother and sisters. I curled up on the back of the couch and watched out of one eye. The puppy didn't give up. Finally, he perked his ears and went to the door. Yap, yap, let me out. I want to play. The puppy jumped up against the door. Clawing at the wood, he continued yapping. Callie had warned me about scratching on the door, but I didn't tell the little white ball of fur. Instead, I decided to watch and see what would happen if the puppy kept it up. It was just a few minutes before the door flew open. Daddy stood over the small pup. He slapped a newspaper against the palm of his hand. It didn't scare the puppy, not one little bit. He jumped up against Daddy's leg. Daddy smacked the newspaper again. The white fur ball just bounced all over the place. Daddy reached down and lifted him up so he could look him square in the eye. Listen, dog. We've got to get some rest here. Settle down and go to sleep. He put the beast back in the box and replaced the cushion over the top. The puppy must have been pretty tired. He soon settled down in the towels at the bottom of the box. I fell asleep listening to the clicking of the white stuff against the window. Before it even got light, sounds began coming from the living room. I crept past the box full of puppy. I peeked under the door. A whole bunch of feet were scurrying around. I reached my paw under and pulled at the wood. Feet shuffled nearer. Mama opened the door and scooped me up. She shut the door quietly. Are you trying to wake up the puppy? Mama glared at me in the eye. The next thing I knew, I was out on the front porch. Quickly, I took care of my business and hurried back to wait for someone to let me in. I hopped on the window ledge and looked inside. People moved around. They bumped into one another, smiled, talked, then scurried about some more. Suddenly, the door opened. I tried to sneak in. A foot pushed me back outside. I jumped on the rocker and fluffed up my fur to keep me warm. Carl and Paul carried boxes and suitcases to the driveway. They made lots of trips back and forth. Just as the sky began to brighten, Dana and Heather bundled up the grandkids in coats, hats, and gloves. Then they brought things that had been in boxes under the tree and stuffed armfuls of toys and presents into their pudgy little hands. At last, the whole group headed down the sidewalk. Mama and Daddy followed them out. I hopped down and walked to the end of the yard where I could see what was going on. After hugs and kisses and more talking, the kids and grandkids piled into a car or a van. When they drove away, Mama and Daddy walked toward the front door. Come on, Greg, let's go in. Mama grabbed me up in her arms. I could sense a sad feeling on Mama. Once inside, I got a good tummy rub. Mama even got the brush and stroked my fur until I was silky and shiny. The sad feeling was still there. I could feel it everywhere. I explored the bedrooms where the kids and grandkids had been. The rooms looked nice and neat, but the emptiness felt strange. I had never noticed it before. The rooms seemed to be too quiet without Josh, Jenny, Katie, and Kenzie. Then the empty and quiet was gone, replaced by this loud, shrill, irritating yapping sound. All at once the puppy came flying down the hall, just as I was walking into the living room. Get him, Owen, Mama said. He needs to go outside this morning before he does something on the floor. I couldn't see any messes in the playroom, so I know that he needs to go out. Suddenly the puppy spotted me. His eyes got big around. Back off, bozo. I bared my teeth and hissed. His tongue hung out of the side of his fuzzy face, and he charged toward me. Daddy grabbed the puppy. I stepped back just in time. As soon as they were outside, I hurried to the food bowl to see what Callie had left me. I gobbled down the tender morsels of cat food. The dog would be back, and I had to hurry to a good spot where he couldn't see me. The window ledge behind the couch was my favorite hiding place. The curtain hid me from view. I liked looking out on the bird feeder. Snow covered the top of it. Winter birds clustered around, fussing over each little seed. The yard was covered in white. I think we need to get the tree down before the puppy and Gray are in here for very long. The mama carried boxes to the couch. She began taking small things from the tree. Each one was wrapped, then set in a box. The long strings of shiny lights were wrapped and put away too. When there was nothing but an empty tree, Daddy carried it out to the front door. Mama got the puppy and gave it a good rub. Daddy sat down with them and squeezed a little squeaky toy. When he rolled it across the floor, the puppy hopped down. He didn't land very well. His front feet kind of folded under him, and he smushed his face against the carpet. Talk about a klutz. He didn't stay on his nose for very long. He jumped up and chased the squeaky toy across the floor. Then he chased his tail. I watched from my hiding spot. For a while, the sad feeling left our house. Mama and Daddy smiled as they watched the puppy bounce around the living room. When the furball finally got tired, Mama picked him up again and sat near the fireplace. She snuggled him on her lap. It was quiet as I watched it snow all day long. The puppy seemed to sleep a lot. Mama and Daddy just sat around most of the time. I think we need to let the puppy stay in the kitchen tonight. I'll put up something to keep him from getting out, kind of like a baby fence that we used to use when the kids were little. That way Gray can get out if he needs to. Mama got up and headed for the playroom. She searched in the closet looking for something. She came out carrying some big pieces of cardboard. Propping them up against the cabinet and the wall, she divided the kitchen from the dining room. At bedtime, Mama put the box of towels in the kitchen. She and Daddy both spread newspapers all over the floor. A step stool, the box, and a bowl of water were the only things left in the room. The puppy and I were put in last. I went to the stool and jumped up to the top step. The puppy lay still in the box for a long time. I was almost asleep when the whining started. The puppy whimpered quietly at first. "I really like to have you near," he said with a sigh. I ignored him. The box wiggled. A black button nose and two little eyes peeked over the edge of it. "I really miss my mama and my brothers and sisters. They play with me all the time." Still trying to ignore him, I turned my head and curled up on the kitchen stool. The box rattled. I opened one eye. Two sharp, pointed white ears stuck up over the edge. They bounced up and down. "I can get out of here," he yapped. "You want to see? I can get out and we can play. You want to play with me? Huh? Want to?" Standing up and arching my back, I yawned. My whiskers tilted up on one side as I sneered down at him. "I don't want to play. Go to sleep." "Oh, please," he whined. "I'm not sleepy. I'm lonely. Let's play." I flipped my tail and jumped from the stool to the cabinet. "Leave me alone." Fuzzy paws banged against the side of the box. "That was cool. I wish I could jump like that. How did you do that?" Instead of answering, I flopped on the kitchen counter and yawned. Why was this guy being such a pest? Everybody knows that cats are great jumpers. Why doesn't he just shut up and go to sleep? The box rocked again when the puppy bounced against the side. Then it tilted and fell over. The furball rolled out, stood, and shook himself. He looked at me, then bounced again against the cabinet doors. There was a sudden splash sound. I lifted my head and peeked over the edge of the counter. With all that bouncing he was doing, the dumb mutt stuck his foot in the water bowl. It splashed all over the place. The papers were wet. His foot was wet. If he kept this up, the whole kitchen was going to be a mess. Suddenly, the whiskers on both sides of my face sprang up. The whole kitchen was going to be a mess? The words seemed to echo inside my head. If this puppy made a mess, the mama and daddy would be mad. When they got mad at me, they'd put me outside. If the puppy was outside, Mama would have more time to pet me. She could give me more tummy rubs instead of petting the puppy. I loved my tummy rubs. Quietly, I got to my feet. I turned and sat on the edge of the counter, dangling the tip of my tail over the side. The puppy jumped up against the cabinet door. I wiggled my tail again. He bounced and tried to nip at it. Sure enough, when he jumped and barked, his little fat hind paws plopped into the water bowl. Water splashed everywhere. He didn't even seem to notice he was all wet. The dumb thing did it again. His soggy feet tracked all over the place. This really was fun. I jumped to the floor. The puppy chased me around the room. Papers jumbled and crumbled into piles. When I leaped back on the counter, the furball tried to catch his own tail. It made the mess even worse. I waited until he quit, then hopped to the floor again. Eyes wide, here he came. Just as he got close, I hopped on the cabinet. The puppy leaped and bounced against the drawers. "I'm tired," he panted finally. "I'm sleepy." I looked down at the mess on the floor. The kitchen was a disaster. Something inside of me gave a little twinge. I don't know what it was. I wanted Mama to be with me, not to spend all her time with the puppy. But the little mutt was so dumb and so trusting and so... Who cares? He's a dumb mutt anyway. I hissed and fuzzed up my fur to get his attention. The chase game started all over again. I loved to watch him spin around chasing his own tail. Just before the sky lightened up, I jumped over the barrier and hopped to the safety of the couch. Tucked in a ball with my tail around my face, I went to sleep. The dumb furball must have finally worn himself out. From the kitchen, I could hear him pant for a while. Then he went to sleep too. I was really snoozing when Mama got up to make her coffee. The little squeal she let out startled me. My eyes popped wide. Mama's mouth was open, as wide as my eyes, when she stood and looked at her kitchen. Good grief, what happened in here? Quickly, I closed my eyes again and tried to pretend I was sleeping. There was a scraping sound when Mama moved the cardboard barrier between the kitchen and the living room. Her feet stomped across the floor. I peeked from one eye, just in time to see her spat the puppy on his fuzzy little rump. Then she put him out back and slammed the door. Just look at what that dog did. He must have been up all night. He's going to have to stay outside. I don't have time to clean up a mess like this every day. Yap, yap, let me in. It's cold out here. I need in. Small puppy claws hit against the door. You didn't have anything to do with this, did you, Gray? I stayed as still as I could when Daddy walked toward me. Of course not. Crossing my paws in front of me and yawning, I tried to purr as loud as I could. Daddy tilted his head to the side and looked at me through squinty eyes. You need to go out anyway, mister. Daddy picked me up and put me out the front door. Cold north wind hit me in the face. Shaking, I stood near the end of the porch. I fluffed up my fur, trying to keep warm. I could hear the puppy whining and whimpering in the backyard. My plan worked. He was out of my house. But for some reason, I didn't feel as good as I thought I should. I mean, why wasn't I happy? The yard was still covered with snow. It was cold and stuck to my paws. The sky was gray and gloomy. With a jerk of my tail, I stood up straight and tall. You did good, Gray, I told myself, trying to feel proud and happy, but not quite feeling that way. I marched off to check out my favorite places. When I got back, Callie was on the rocking chair. She did not look happy.